It's strange that Boston Manor gets talked about in the pop punk sphere anymore. Similar to a band like Trash Boat, they released a quote unquote pop punk album on a quote unquote pop punk label and immediately felt too confined by the trappings of the genre. So, whenever this band gets talked about on pop punk forums and subreddits and videos, there's plenty of comments that probably annoy Boston Manor very much. Like, is this the same band that released Be Nothing? Man, Boston Manor have fallen off. Surely it's a facetious comment, but maybe Boston Manor could take those as compliments. They've evolved into a completely different band, and with the release of Sundiver right around the corner, I wanted to take a look at the works and evolution of Boston Manor as they grew and evolved beyond pop punk. They started with a couple of EPs, Here Slash Now in 2013 and Driftwood in 2014. They've got good songs, they're an enjoyable listen, especially Driftwood, but they're hardly distinguishable from other British or UK punk bands that never quite made it big. But after those, they would sign with Pure Noise Records, which made perfect sense for their sound. When you look at who is on that label, you pretty much know what you're gonna get. They would release another EP on Pure Noise before their debut full-length Be Nothing would grace our ears. Although this would be many people's favorite Boston Manor record, the band would say that they were scared to take any risks on this album. In spite of this, I still think they made a pretty kick-ass record. There's a clear improvement in the production quality from their EPs. No longer does Boston Manor sound like a local band that recorded something in their garage. No hate to local bands, that flavor can rock and sound awesome, but clearly Boston Manor wanted to sound bigger than that. And I think they succeeded here. Henry Cox's vocals in particular are much improved, and we hear what Boston Manor has to offer that sets them apart from their counterparts on Pure Noise. A deeper voice and a knack for an aggressive performance drew me into Boston Manor's sound. Tracks like Broken Glass felt very unique to me at the time, and is still my favorite song on this record. It's also one that sounds like it could have been in their later albums, perhaps a preview of what was to come in their later career. The fan favorite, Laika, will sucker punch anyone who loves to sing along to I'm So Sorry in a catchy chorus, a pop punk staple. I'm pretty sure that this is the first song I ever heard by Boston Manor, and it serves as a pretty good jumping off point for me with this band. While Be Nothing did have upgraded sounds, it still sounded like a band with the usual pop punk structure, vocally forward mixed with guitar, bass, and drums, pretty standard. 2 years later, we would find out that Boston Manor had a much bigger sound in mind. Their sophomore LP would all but disregard the Be Nothing style and take us by surprise. This wasn't pop punk anymore. This is gonna look so weird next to my State Champs CD. Welcome to the Neighborhood embraced the idea of a concept record loosely tied around a fictionalized version of their hometown Blackpool. Welcome to the Neighborhood has this atmosphere of grime, leather, concrete. I don't know how else to describe it. Like it could score The Matrix or something. I loved it. It sounded like Boston Manor had access to a whole new world of sounds, synthetic or otherwise. Very alternative, very industrial, very layered. I liked it a lot, and it really, really works on tracks like Welcome to the Neighborhood and The Day That I Ruined Your Life. The songs on this album feel a tiny bit samey because they stick so closely together to that grimy atmosphere, but for me it still works, and it was an evolution that I was very excited for with Boston Manor. But this slow and moody flavor of the band was not for everyone, and there were just as many people calling it a downgrade as there were people saying that it was Album of the Year in 2018. Anyone hoping for a return to the Be Nothing sound would have their hopes dashed by Boston Manor's 2020 follow-up to Welcome to the Neighborhood. Their third album, Glue, leaned much more into this new sound, but soaked it in gasoline and lit a match. Henry Cox had this to say in an interview with New Noise magazine. When we really kind of dove into this record and realized what it was, I think we became very confident, and the songs kind of became confident in themselves. They started to take a new form. I don't want us to use the word aggression, but there's definitely an anger about the record, but it is quite volatile. It's immediately apparent on the explosive opener, Everything is Ordinary, that Boston Manor is still very much experimenting. Henry's vocals are distorted throughout this track and this album, but that doesn't stop him from delivering many exceptional and addictive choruses. I thought that Welcome to the Neighborhood was a little too consistently subdued, and what I love about Glue is that it isn't afraid to jump directly off the deep end. Henry's performance, the guitar work, the drumming is manic, and Henry's degeneration into screams are the highlights on any song it happens in. Much of this anger is the result of the political happenings in Europe at the time of this album's recording, and the band's frustration of the world that they live in is palpable on Glue. But that's not to say that Glue is constant chaos. Songs like Plasticine Dreams and Stuck in the Mud slow us down a bit and are welcome pace breakers. On a High Ledge sounds like it could have been on Welcome to the Neighborhood, but its inclusion here somehow doesn't feel out of place. It's exceedingly creepy and unsettling, especially when you don't quite know the lyrics. But when you read along with the lyric book, it takes on a whole new meaning and is a highlight of the album. It would be my favorite song on Glue if not for You, Me, and the Class War. The guitars, the vocals, the soft chorus, the aggressive verses. It's got to be my favorite Boston Manor song ever. It has an unfair advantage though, because hearing this song live was my favorite moment in a live concert ever. I'm getting bored of waking up alone. Side note, Boston Manor is amazing in concert. Easily my top 3 concerts I've seen. So what are Boston Manor up to now? Well, they're still evolving. In 2022, they released Datura, a 7-track album labeled as the first part in a 2-part series of albums. This album is very dark, while 2024's will be its counterpart, the light at the end of the tunnel. Part 2, titled Sundiver, comes out next week. Maybe Sundiver completes the Datura puzzle for me, and I'm hopeful I will get more out of the 2 projects together than I did on their own. As usual though, I'm excited that Boston Manor continues to push themselves and take risks. When talking about Datura, Henry had this to say: if theoretically this is panned by the fan base, then they're probably not going to be rushing out to buy part 2, Cox admits. But it's the risk that you take as an artist. I hate that arrogant musician soundbite where they're like, this is the most insert adjective here record we've ever made. But it does excite me that we're still taking risks. If you're watching this after Sundiver came out, let me know if the risk paid off in the comments. Otherwise, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.